Erev Tov. I think Rabbi Segel, tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, we budgeted a half an hour for learning together, and then afterwards there's a conversation with Yoetzet Halacha Shalvi Gordon Friedman. Okay, it happens. Lindsay, you're still resting.
Simmons.
Wait, you were Simmons, and now you're Simmons Raston.
Now I'm just Simmons.
Now you're still just Simmons. Okay. There are individuals here who are very dear to me in this room, and there are other individuals whose friendship I'm delighted to begin tonight. Rabbi Segel asked me to spend a half an hour learning something, and I said to myself, I need to have a text, and babies do not disturb me. Okay. If they're not my responsibility, they're the most delicious things in the world. I chose a text which to me is very meaningful. It's a story in the Gemara in Chulin Daf Kuf Yud. I'm going to read this primarily in English, but a little bit in the original. But I need to give you an introduction to this, and then I want to learn through it together within this half hour that we have together. In order for you to follow the story, I have to explain to you how to kosher udders. The udder of a cow, for instance, because if we don't know that, we won't be able to follow the story. So first, how do we kosher meat? The answer is today we don't kosher meat. Today someone does it for us, and we go to the butcher or we go to the supermarket or wherever we buy our meat if we're not vegetarians, and it's done for us. But the process of koshering meat is very simple. I remember this from my childhood. My mother would do this every week with the chickens that the butcher delivered to our home. That's what once upon a time was the case. I think if everyone goes far enough back in your families, you would find a great-grandmother a great-grandmother who certainly could tell you about the experience of koshering. Koshering is very simple. To meet kosher requirements, first of all, the meat needs to come from a kosher animal. Secondly, it needs to be slaughtered according to the laws of shechita. But third, the meat needs to have the blood removed from it because Jews are not permitted to eat blood. Now, the way one does this is to soften the meat. One soaks it in tepid water, and after soaking it a bit, you then have to salt it. You take the meat out of the soaking water, and you put it on a slant board or on a reshet, on something on which the blood can drip down, and you need to salt it, shtiva arev, one direction and another direction, on both sides, and you leave it that way for an hour, and it's on a drip board of some sort, and in which it's not, the meat is not sitting within the liquid that is being expelled. Salt pulls out, as anyone who salts a salad too early knows, you end up with tomato water, and the nice juicy tomatoes no longer are nice and juicy. The salt pulls out the liquid. It does that. You do that for an hour, and then afterwards you rinse it off, and then your meat has been kosher. But when there are certain organs of an animal which are more problematic than others. The one that we're most familiar with is what? Liver. Liver, we don't buy kosher, and you can't kosher liver by the regular procedure because liver is soaked with blood. It's not just liver, it's also the heart, but those organs are less commonly consumed. So what do you do with liver? You salt it very lightly, and then you're able to broil it and
Grilled in UK.
Oh, thank you.
I remember from a different
Thank
year
you.
you
Thank
totally
you.
understood.
Thank you. You can grill you can grill the liver, and then the liver can be consumed. Now, the liver is problematic because it contains a substance that's prohibited to us, blood. But the udders contain a substance which is permitted to us, but the udder of an animal has its own specific problem, which is what? Milk and meat. It's meat which contains milk. So how do you kasher an udder? Well, if you open up Shulchan Aruch Yoredeya, I forget which siman it is right now, and you'll see the following instructions. You cannot, the udder is kosher, but you can't cook an udder with other meats. To kasher an udder, you have two choices. Let's just assume you wish to make, here, please, there must be some good cooks here, and gentlemen and ladies. What would you do with udders? And if you were not going to grill them, what would you do with an udder? If you want, you might wish to grind it up and to make hamburgers. To make hamburgers, you're not going to grill the meat first. You're going to wish to grind it up. Let's just say we wish to. Generally, these cuts of meat were less costly, much, much cheaper. They were often discarded. Someone who ate udders told me, I asked what the taste was because there's a Gemara about it, a very interesting Gemara that tells us about the taste of udders. And I asked, so what's the taste of udders? And they said, well, it has the consistency of over-baked macaroni and cheese with a taste of bologna. So if this is interesting to anybody here, you can get this black kosher, but you have to find a supplier for udders. So the way you kasher an udder is as follows. You have to slash it crosswise, like an X, shtiva arev, but really slash it. You have to scrape the interior of the udder to make sure that there's no milk left there. And then, literally, Shulchan Aruch tells you this, you bang it against the wall until there's no liquid left. Now, why would you bang it against the wall? It's so logical if you realize the principle. Why would you bang it against the wall? I mean, why wouldn't you bang it against the table if already you're going to bang that udder?
The liquid falls down.
That's right, because there you would be banging the udder into the milk that's been expelled. So you bang it against the wall and the milk flows down. That's the background you need to this story. This story takes place in 3rd century Babylonia. I don't remember whether I gave the shiur this year at Nishmat or not. Yes and no. Okay. So you can correct me, Odell, if I make any mistakes. The story takes place in Surah. There were two primary centers of study, of Talmudic study in Babylonia in the 3rd century, Surah and Pumbedita. And this story is going to be about a certain gentleman from Pumbedita who came to Surah on Erev Yom Kippur. And we begin with, I'm going to read this primarily in English, but I'm going to start off in Hebrew. B'surah lo achle kachli, b'pumbedita achle kachli. In Surah they did not eat udders, in Pumbedita they did eat udders. In other words, in Surah, the elders, the rabbinic elders of the city, came to a decision that it was not wise to eat udders, and therefore they passed an ordinance for their city that we don't eat udders. In other words, it's kosher, but the reasons are quite obvious. It's just imagine you get a cut of meat and you're used to koshering it one way, and you have now something which needs to be koshered in a very complicated fashion. So in Surah they did not, this was the decision of the city, they did not eat udders. In Pumbedita they ate udders. And Rami bar Chamrei, Dehu Rami bar Dikule, Pumbedita, Ikla L'Sura B'Male Yoma Dikipure. A certain individual from Pumbedita, whose name is Rami bar Tamre, came to Surah on Erev Yom Kippur. I'm going to read this in, I'll continue this paragraph in both languages. Afkinu kule alma lekachlinhu. Now, what are Jews doing on Erev Yom Kippur? Everyone is preparing for the day on which the great day of mercy, of Rachamim, which we're going to spend entirely in prayer and fasting. So what else do we do? What do we do on Erev Yom Kippur? We eat. And wherever I hope we do more than just eat. I hope we, knowing that the end of judgment is near, I hope we give tzedakah, I hope we do other things, but we eat, we prepare food and we eat because we know we need to be in shul and we want the strength to pray as we should. So everyone in Surah what were they doing with the udders? They obviously shechted, and you had everybody at this time is having a meat meal. They discarded their udders. And then we're told, Shadid Azal Ihu, Naktinhu Achlinhu. Rami went. Remember, he's from Pumbedita, where they eat udders. And everyone's throwing out their udders. So he went, and he gathered the udders, and he ate the udders. They brought him before the Dayan of the city, a great Talmid Chacham, one of the foremost Talmudic sages, Rav Chisda. They brought Rami before Rav Chisda because Rami is eating udders on Erev Yom Kippur. Now we're going to go over to the English. Rav Chisda said to him, "But do you not hold that we impose upon him the stringencies of the place from which he departed and the stringencies of the place to which he has gone?" Let me explain that. If we have different customs in different places, and the person from one place goes to a place which has a stringency that he has not practiced, but they all practice it in that place, the halacha is, so long as he is in that place, or if he wishes to settle in that place, he accepts upon himself the stringency and acts in accordance with the way halacha is followed in that city. On the other hand, if he had a stringency in the place that he came from, and he goes to a place which doesn't observe a stringency, he still observes, so long as he's going back to his first place, he still observes his first stringency, even though the others are not bound by it. So Rav Chisda says to Rami, don't you, I skipped a vital line, I'm going back. They apprehended him and brought him before Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said to him, "Why did you do so?" He replied, "I'm from the place of Rav Yehuda." In other words, I'm from Pumbedita. I'm from the place of Rav Yehuda, who eats udders. So then Rav Chisda says to him, "But wait, don't you hold by the fact that notnim alav chumrei hamakom sheyatza misham v'chumrei hamakom shehalach l'sham? Don't you hold by that?" In other words, okay, you come from Pumbedita, but you're now in Surah, and in Surah we do not eat udders. He replied, I'm losing it. Rami bar Tamre replied, "I ate them outside of city limits." Is that kosher? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. In other words, did he violate anything? He took those udders, he gathered them because people had discarded the udders. He took the udders, but he didn't eat them in the town of Surah. He ate them outside of city limits. And with what did you roast the udders? Rav Chisda asks, Ubemai tavinhu, but with what did you roast the others that you ate outside of city limits? Rami Bar Tamre replied, with grape pits. With grape pits. I don't know if there's anyone here who's a chazan. One of my mechutanim is a chazan, and for many, many years he davened for the Amud on Rosh Hashanah. And he asked one of the outstanding chazanim of the generation, what do you do? Your throat gets so, at the beginning of Musaf, you finish in Niha Animi Mas and your throat is dry. And he said, put grape pits on your tongue. And my mechutin told me this story last week, and I said, wow, now I understand this Gemara. Apparently grape pits are very rich in oils, and having that grape pit on your tongue enables you, the chazan, you haven't eaten, but enables you to be able to continue davening. So he says, Rav Chisda says, with what did you roast the others? And Rami says, with grape pits. Now we have Rav Chisda asking him, but perhaps they were from prohibited wine, from pagan rites. Grape pits, how do you know the provenance of those grape pits? Where did those grape pits come from? Anything that was libated to idolatry is prohibited to us. And maybe the wine, maybe these grape pits come from grapes which we used in a ritual in idolatry and are prohibited to us. Rami Bar Tamre replied, it was after 12 months, so they're no longer prohibited. There's a halacha that after 12 months, they're not considered what they had been previously. Rav Chisda continues and says, but perhaps they were stolen goods. How do you know you were permitted to use those grape pits? He replied, Yeush ba'alim havei, dekadchu behu chilfei. He said the owners had despaired of them. Surya in Bava Metzia, the owners had relinquished their ownership. I know this because there were meadows M-E-T-T-L-E-S. There was vegetation growing amongst them. In other words, these were discarded grape pits, and what I did was fine. Baruch haba. Rav Chisda saw that he was not wearing tefillin. Chazia lo havei menach tefillin. Amar le, mai ta'ama lo menachat tefillin. He said to him, why are you not wearing tefillin? Amar le, choli me'ayin hu. V'amar Rav Yehuda, choli me'ayin patur min ha'tefillin. Rami Bar Tamre replied to him, he, in other words, this man, he suffers from a stomach ailment, and Rav Yehuda has said sufferers of a stomach ailment are exempt from tefillin. He saw that he didn't have strings, he didn't have tzitzit. Rav Chisda said to him, why do you not have tzitzit? Amar le talit she'ulahi. Rami said, well, it's a borrowed cloak. Tzitzit in their days were not a garment that a man wore under his clothing, but rather fringes that were attached to the garment itself. So Rav Chisda sees Rami isn't wearing tefillin. In those days, they wore tefillin all day, not just as part of the morning prayers. So he sees they're not wearing tefillin, and then he sees he doesn't have tzitzit. And Rami has an answer for that also. He says, what? It's a borrowed garment, and Rav Yehuda said a borrowed garment is exempt from tzitzit the entire 30 days. I'm going to stop here and ask you, what do you think is going on in this story? You have the story. What do you think is going on?
It seems to be a little bit about Hafswas, like that every time we ask the question, like, is that there is a very reasonable
In other words, you're saying, I'm finding this very interesting. Rami is being challenged, but his answers are legitimate.
But was he inventing the answers? Were the garments really borrowed?
Well, let's start out with the udders. Remember, he's gathered the udders. In Surah, they don't eat udders, and that's why everyone has discarded their udders. And Rami is taking the udders. And he has an answer for that. He hasn't violated anything. Why?
Because he didn't eat them in Surah.
Because chutz matchum achaltinu, I ate them outside of the city limits. He has an answer for the udders. And he has an answer for with what did he broil the udders or grill the udders? How did he grill the udders? With grape pits. Maybe they're stolen grape pits. Maybe they're yayin nesach grape pits. And the answer is what? They're not stolen because there were metals growing amongst them. In other words, they were obviously abandoned by their former owner. They're not yayin nesach because you could see that they were old. And then Rav Chisda sees there's no tefillin. How come you're not wearing tefillin? And what's his answer? Well, I have stomach problems, and Rav Yehuda has taught us that someone with stomach problems doesn't put on tefillin. Well, what about tzitzit? And what's his answer?
It's a borrowed garment.
It's a borrowed garment. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, Rav Chisda's asking the questions. I mean, he didn't. He's like, did he need to go any further than no? Okay, the others, but he's looking for something.
What's Rav Chisda looking for?
Looking to implicate, to catch him out.
Is Rav Chisda looking to catch Rami? In other words, is there something in Rami's behavior which is deeply troubling to Rav Chisda? Yes.
He seems to be riding on a wave of heterium and the outer limit of halacha.
In other words,
The competition.
is he competition? Yes, what?
We don't know whether Rav Chisda knows the answers he's going to get from Rami or not. It's quite possible he did, and it's an education for other people to learn all these different things. So if Rav Chisda knows this, what he's doing is teaching everybody else that you don't have to eat, you can eat grape pits after 12 months
Or he's teaching another lesson to others who are present. I'll continue your direction because I think there's keen insight there. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Don't be quick to judge.
What?
Don't be quick to judge.
Don't be quick to judge. There's a Yom Kippur message here for us. Don't be quick to judge. Nana?
I did hear this from somebody else, but I think that the real lesson is, here is somebody who's clearly, if you read between the lines, in abject poverty.
Yeah, I think that's what's deeply troubling to me.
Instead of being invited in to have a Seudat HaMaseket, the people of the town are holding him up in front of Betin, basically.
Yeah.
And
That's what's so disturbing here. That
the answer to each of these questions, which we can say Rav Chisda surmised that there is a reason. Why else would somebody be going through the rubbish bins
well,
of a
you
town
say to
find
yourself,
food?
you say to yourself, there's a very disturbing story here. It's a disturbing story because it's occurring on Erev Yom Kippur, and somehow there are people on Erev Yom Kippur who are noticing that this man is not behaving as we in Surah have accepted upon ourselves to behave. Now, it's absolutely legitimate to accept the Shomrei if that's what you wish to do. If the city feels, for whatever the reason, that it's the right thing to do, the city is permitted to do so. But people are not noticing that there's someone scavenging in the garbage on Erev Yom Kippur. That's what's, you read through the story, and initially it seems almost humorous that for everything that's noted about him, there's an answer, but you say to yourself, wait just a minute. We Jews on Yom Kippur, we're asking for Rachamim. We're asking for Hashem's mercy on Yom Kippur. And there's a cloud in Halacha that someone who has sinned against their fellow man, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to wipe away that sin unless we make our peace with the person we've sinned against. And beyond that, we speak of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mahu Rachum, Afatar Rachum, just as God is merciful, you be merciful. And you say to yourself, there's a very troubling Erev Yom Kippur story here. And what's your name, please, the gentleman who, yes?
Mike.
Okay, well, what Mike said can carry us through the story, that Rav Chisda has people who have, if we say that what Rav Chisda is doing here is teaching his community, they have come before him to complain. And they've come, I mean, you begin trembling once you understand the situation, and you say, wait just a minute, all of these good Jews who are preparing to go and to pray on Yom Kippur when the gates of heaven are open, and what are we asking for? We're asking for Hashem's Rachamim, and we're asking for Hashem's mercy, and I'm sure these are fine, upstanding people, but they just don't see that there's someone looking in the garbage, and no one goes around gathering garbage if there's a way for him to eat.
So why doesn't Rav Chisda just say that to them?
Oh, I think there are many different ways of reading this, but if we're reading this the way Michael is reading this, the answer is that if you want to teach someone, if you want to teach a community, you have to show them. And there's a community here that has not behaved properly on Erev Yom Kippur. And I'm just going to finish this and to sew it up with the last paragraph. Adahachi aituha lahuhuka v'adlo havei mokar aviha v'imei kaftu. While this was going on, Rav Chisda was the dayan of the city. They brought in an individual for lashing before Yom Kippur because he refused to honor his father and mother. Honoring the father and the mother, Bara tells us, this means giving food, giving those services which are needed, accompanying them to where they need to go, giving them the food that they need. And obviously this individual had refused to take care of his elderly parents at a time when there are no social services. The community is there to provide if the family is not taking responsibility. So he was brought before Rav Chisda to administer lashes to him. Rav Chisda is the head of the Beit Din on Erev Yom Kippur for disobeying. They bound him for lashes. Rami said to them, Shavkuhu, release him. Don't tie him up, release him. For the Talmud teaches us that, I'm going to go over to the Hebrew for a minute, the Tanya, kol mitzvah taseh shematan schara b'tzida, en beit din shelamata muzharin aleha. Rami told them, release him, for the Talmud teaches us that any positive commandment whose reward is stipulated, an earthly court has no jurisdiction over it. Now, kibud ava'im, the reward is stipulated for honoring one's parents. What's the reward? L'man yarichun yamecha, so your days will be made lengthy in this world. So Rami says, untie him. You do not have the right to lash him, because we have a klal in halakha, we have a rule that any positive mitzvah whose reward is a positive mitzvah, is a mitzvah like Zochorit Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho, remember Shabbat to sanctify it, not a mitzvah that prohibits us from doing something, but commands us to do something, to build a sukkah, to blow a shofar. These are positive mitzvah. So any positive mitzvah whose reward is stipulated, Beit Din does not have jurisdiction over. Rav Chisda said to him, I see you are very sharp. Rami said to him, if you were in Rav Yehuda's location, you would see those who are sharp. You would see people who are sharp. And I'm going to finish by saying, Erev Tov, I'm going to finish by saying that I think that what Rami is saying to us is a message which is very important to us. That if you, there are two modalities. You can punish, or you can litamgate. You can encourage.
Carrot or stick.
Pardon me?
Carrot or stick.
Yes. The positive mitzvah whose reward is stipulated doesn't need the stick, because you have the inducement to provide the mitzvah. And what I think is being said here is perhaps that if you want to do without punishment, then you need to have an inducement. You need education. You need to show people that which they will benefit from, because otherwise, if not, the only way of keeping us humans in line is to punish us, and we don't like punishment. And therefore, I think we Jews have been given the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, the mitzvah of studying, of teaching Torah, which gives us all of the tamgitzim, gives us all of the positive inducements to perform mitzvah. So, with this, we pass to the second part of the program, and I hope every one of us approaches the heavenly court on Yom Kippur with not just a request for rachamim, but that we all truly open our hearts, and that we Jews always remember that Judaism stands on 2 feet. Bein Adam Lamakom, mitzvot between ourselves and God, the classic, what we might call religious mitzvot, but the other mitzvot between man and his fellow man are no less religious mitzvot, and I hope we all manage to fill our bags before Yom Kippur and to be blessed with a good and healthy